Hello and welcome to Crowd Church, coming to you live from Liverpool this Sunday night. My name is Matt Edmundson, and whether this is your first time or whether you've been part of our journey since the beginning, it's brilliant to be with you. We are a community of people figuring out what it means to follow Jesus in real life. Not the polished, perfect version, but the messy, genuine, brilliant reality of this whole thing called Christianity. So let me give you a little roadmap of what's going to be happening over the next hour. We'll have a talk, lasts about 20 minutes, looking at the topic of relationships, which is the section of our series, Becoming Whole, that we are looking at, exploring how Christ makes us whole across every domain of life. After the talk, we've got Conversation Street. Oh yes, this is where we dig into what you've just heard and you get to be part of that discussion. So if you're with us live, jump into the comments, share your questions, your thoughts and your stories. And of course, if you're watching on catch up or listening to the podcast, then thanks for being part of the crowd too. Right, let's meet your hosts and let's get started.
Welcome to Crowd Church. It's great to be here tonight.
Yeah, welcome everyone.
I'm joined by the lovely Jan. Well,
Yeah,
I always forget to introduce myself. I'm Dan.
and
this
I'm
is Jan.
and I'm joined by lovely Jan, Jan, and Matt tonight.
Yes, and Matt. So, from a change from the promoted schedule, Dave's not very well, so Matt has stepped in and he's doing the talk tonight. So looking forward to that. Are you well, Jan?
I am. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah,
Enjoying the rain rather
loving
than
the
snow.
rain. It's good for the garden.
Yeah.
Shame I haven't got one, but be very good for the garden.
Well, I think let's just pass over to Matt. All this chatter. Let Matt bring the word.
Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate that. Listen, like a good few seconds to get yourself sorted out. It's like, welcome to crowd, here's Matt's. And we need to work on your banter and skills. So very warm welcome to you. Great to be with you tonight. And yes, like if Dave, you're watching, we wish you well. We hope you recover quickly. That's for sure. So let me just get my notes sorted out and we will get cracking.
Apologies, Matt.
Yeah,
I'm not
thanks.
giving you any time. I went from, well, let's not talk too much to let's not really talk at all.
It's always extremes with you, Dan.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, it's great to be with you. And make sure you say hi in the comments if you haven't done so already. Be great to hear from you. And as I go through the talk, any questions, any thoughts, put them in the comments. And we'll get to them in Conversation Street, no doubt. Now, there is a really famous story in the Bible. And it's a story where Jesus walks on water. Yes, and in that story, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think Peter's hands are probably bleeding. Not just metaphorically, but actually physically bleeding, because the rough wood of the oar has probably worn through the calluses in his hands that took decades to build. What's happened is they've been rowing for 9 hours through a storm, and that boat that they are on is not going anywhere. And these men aren't amateurs, they're professional fishermen, if there was such a thing, at the time of Jesus. I'm sure they paid their dues. But these guys were professional fishermen, men who have worked the waters since boyhood, men who know every current, every wind pattern, and every mood of the lake. But right at this point, their expertise, their knowledge, their insider trading, all that sort of stuff is not making one little bit of difference. It doesn't matter at all. Their expertise, well, who cares, right? The storm doesn't. It's kind of reached its limits. And it's got all the markings, this story, of a supernatural Hollywood drama. So to understand it, I want to go back to the beginning of the story, because 9 hours before, this was definitely not a drama. Everything was just peachy smooth, as they say. And we find the story in Matthew's Gospel. And the Bible tells us that Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross over to the other side of the lake whilst he sent the people home. And so there's a simple enough instruction, right? Get in the boat, go to the other side of the lake, go home. Now this trip should take about 4 hours from door to door. Okay, possibly less if the wind is cooperating, but it should be about 3 or 4 hours. And you know what? I think at the time there's going to be buzzing among the disciples when Jesus tells them to get in the boat, because it's the day, at the end of the day, where Jesus has just fed 5,000 people with a boys' packed lunch. So it's been a pretty miraculous day. That's what has just happened. They watched it with their own eyes. They got to experience it. They were part of that miracle. And it was a heck of a day, right? I would love to have been there and eaten some of that bread and fish. And now to end it, Jesus is sending the people home. He's not told the disciples to do it. Jesus himself is going to do it. And he tells the disciples to get in the boat, go to the other side. Once he's finished, he's going to go and pray. Okay. All very straightforward. And it should have been a very straightforward crossing, because that is what they do. They are fishermen. And it is what they know. It's their wheelhouse. It's their skill set. So what actually happens? Well, we don't know the exact specifics because it's not covered in crazy detail in Scripture. But I think we can imagine the scene, can't we? So the first hour they're in the boat, it's pretty easy. There's probably stories and laughter from the day. Everything seems to be going as it should. But by the second hour, maybe the wind starts to pick up a little bit. Maybe it's not that alarming. You know, the lake can be a little bit moody like that, really. But hour 4 comes and goes. This is when they should have been home. The boat should have been pulling into the shore. Yet 5 hours later, 9 hours after they started, they're still not making any progress at all. They're still stranded in the middle of the lake. For every stroke forward, the wind pushes them back. And the boat is full of, like I say, professional fishermen, experts in their field. And right now, that expertise means absolutely nothing. And I think you can feel it, can't you, when you read the story? Maybe even smell the rain and the water crashing into the bow of the boat. And I wonder if any of it feels familiar. So let's suppose, for example, you're a project manager and you've delivered dozens of projects on time and on budget, right? You know the frameworks, you know the methodologies, and you know the communication strategies, because this is what you do, right? This is your wheelhouse. This is your skill set. It's what you know. But then you get that project, where 6 months in, and despite every tool in your toolbox, every late night, every strategy session, you are still going nowhere. And the deadlines keep on slipping. And if you're like me, you can even feel maybe just a little bit of shame here, because you get that voice that whispers, you should be able to handle this, right? You're the professional, you're the leader, you're the boss, you're the man in charge. You've done this before. What is wrong with you? Now, as I mentioned last week, 2025 wasn't particularly an easy year, and I felt like I was rowing in the storm. It felt like I was getting a bit battered by different waves, like Sharon's cancer and other waves through work and through life and circumstances. I won't bore you with the details, but it felt a little bit like you're getting battered by the waves. And some mornings I found it actually really hard to get out of bed. I just wanted to stay in bed under the covers and hibernate. And when I did get up, I tried to stick to my morning routine, of course, reading the Bible. I get up, I read the Bible, then I go do a workout. But honestly, some days it felt like I was reading Chinese, I suppose, when reading the Bible, because the words just were not going in. And then, if I'm honest, the workouts weren't that great either. Maybe 6 out of 10 in terms of intensity. So all these things I knew to do, like pray, read the Bible, work out, strategize, plan. But it didn't seem to work. I just kind of felt like I was stuck. And I think about the disciples in the boat, and I wonder if eventually actually they sort of fell into this silence with each other, because I don't think there's probably much left to say at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it felt a little bit like that, I suppose, with me, even with my friends, they would have been interested in what's going on, obviously helpful. In metaphorically, they were in the boat with us, but it was hard to talk about stuff because they're going through their own battles, their own storms. They're in it as well, and you don't want to add to their problems, and they didn't want to add to yours, and so it can feel a little bit like you're rowing the boat in silence, which I wonder is what happened with these guys at that time of the morning. And I don't think it's anything to do with competence either, or even incompetence. I think, and I don't think competence is the enemy. I don't think it's wrong to have a skill set. It's not wrong to have routines that work. But I think there are times in life when you need more than what you have because you feel like you're rowing with all your might and yet going nowhere. So what happens next in the story? Well, the Bible tells us that the disciples were in trouble, far off from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" So again, you've got this sort of picture in your head, haven't you? Or if you haven't, get one. Just think about what's going on, right? There's sort of this figure walking towards you in the middle of the night, and terror absolutely floods the boat along with the waves, and they cry out, "It's a ghost," because men don't walk on water. That's not the rational explanation. The rational explanation is this is a ghost because this is out of the ordinary. And if you think about this for a moment, right, these men had watched Jesus feed 5,000 people from a boy's lunch just a few hours ago. They'd witnessed it, they'd partook in it, and they celebrated a miracle. And it's like now all that's forgotten, right? And I wonder if this is what exhaustion does to us. It makes you forget what you've already experienced. I think that's why a lot of times in the Bible, Jesus or God tells us to build a memorial to help us remember the times that God has acted in our lives. So at this point, Jesus speaks and he reassures them. He said, Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." It's great, isn't it? And if the story at this point, if the story is not crazy enough for you, right? Peter, who has been rowing for 9 hours, exhausted, hands calloused and bleeding, and now terrified, his response, which I think is just brilliant, is to ask if he can leave the boat entirely, right? The Bible says Peter called to him, talking about Jesus, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." This is brilliant. I mean, why would you do that, right? Why, when you're drowning in a boat, battered by storms, would you voluntarily leave the only thing that's keeping you afloat? And I wonder if it's because Peter perhaps understood something in that moment that I think you can really only understand in that kind of moment. See, the boat was safety. Absolutely, it was safety. But the boat was also the limitation, right? The boat was keeping him alive, but the boat was also keeping him stuck. So when you're exhausted, or when you've exhausted, should I say, when you've exhausted your competence, I think you finally get to a place where you're open to something beyond your competence. And we see this time and time again in the Bible. And Peter's request really only makes sense because 9 hours of rowing, I think, had stripped away all of his self-sufficiency. And it's interesting to me because he wasn't asking for the storm to stop, which maybe that's the first thing that would come to my mind if I saw the living Christ walking on water towards me in a storm. I'd be like, dude, just calm the waters, please. But he didn't, which is extraordinary. He was asking to be with Jesus in the storm. He was asking to be with Jesus in the miraculous. And I can empathize with this a little bit. Not that I can walk on water. I tried it several times and failed every single time, especially in the swimming pools. Have you tried walking on water? Lord, let's just have a little go. Yeah, it's not going to work today, is it? There he went. But last year, in the midst of being tired and being on the edge a little bit, I wasn't, don't let me over dramatize things. I wasn't burnt out, but I think I was pretty close. But in the midst of all that craziness and busyness, I felt like God was telling me to do more, which is ironic because I didn't have enough time to do what I already had to do. So how could I do more? And I guess more importantly, why do I think it was God telling me this? And I think the answer for me, thinking it through, lies in the fact that it makes absolutely no sense, right? Which may sound counterintuitive because it wasn't an external pressure. It was just something that felt completely bonkers in the situation for me. A bit like Peter getting out of the boat. It's kind of bonkers, but it requires a miracle. So Jesus turns to Peter and he says, "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water to Jesus. It's brilliant, isn't it? Jesus invites Peter into the miracle. No instructions, no technique, just an invitation, really. And I see Peter, again, in my mind as I try and picture what's going on. If you haven't seen The Chosen, watch this scene in The Chosen. Have you guys seen it? It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I see Peter dropping his oar and his legs shaking a little bit as he tries to stand, and the boat rocks from side to side, from him standing up and from the waves going on. Maybe someone in the boat tells him not to do it, but he swings one leg over the side. And I'm kind of curious, was it his right leg or his left leg? I don't know. The Bible doesn't say, but it's just how my brain works, right? And then his foot touches the water and it holds, right? Like he's walking on ground. And then he puts another foot down and another and another. And Peter is walking on water. The same water that's been defeating him all night is now supernaturally holding his weight. And he is not doing this through any skill that he has learned. He's walking because Jesus simply told him to come. And somehow that is enough. But this massive wave, I guess, sort of rises maybe to his right, and spray stings his eyes, and the wind howls louder, and suddenly Peter's brain kicks back in. The professional fisherman creates the professional assessment. Men don't walk on water, Peter. This is slightly nuts. This is impossible. And so the Bible tells us that when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. And I read that, and I don't know how you read it, but it feels to me kind of like Peter starts to slowly sink, right? Like he's in quicksand, that kind of slowness in his sinking. Because you don't begin to sink in water, do you? I mean, you sink immediately. If you've ever tried walking on water, you know within less than a second, you are down. No story, right? Just there it is. So it seems that even in the sinking, there seems to be a bit of a miracle going on because somehow that slows down. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, watching this, walking on water, really? Hey, what's going on there, Matt? That's not real, is it? And I get it, and I'm not going to pretend that this is a small thing to accept. But I want you to notice what this story does to you. Does it resonate? Does the image of Jesus walking through someone else's chaos move something in you? Does the picture of exhausted people being met in the middle of their failure stir something? It does me. And sometimes the heart recognizes the truth before the mind has all the evidence. And if you're not yet there, that's okay. But just stay with the story. So what happens next? Well, the Bible says, "Save me, Lord," Peter, shouted, "Save me." And I think I probably would shout the same thing as Peter if I was, starting to sink in the water. Lord, save me. And I don't think that's just a drowning man's prayer. I think that is the quintessential human prayer. Lord, save me. Save me from what's trying to kill me, save me from myself, and bring me to life. And the Bible says, and immediately Jesus reached out and grabbed his hand and caught him. And I love this word immediately. And he says to Peter, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Now, I want you to sit with this phrase for a moment, because Peter had just failed quite publicly and quite dramatically, right? At the very thing he volunteered for, in front of everybody, in front of all of his friends, he is soaking wet and probably, I'm going to guess, humiliated and maybe slightly confused. So Jesus, I think, in that state gives him gentleness. He gives him a question, not condemnation, but a simple question. And he also gives him a hand that stops him sinking again. And that's God's grace in action, isn't it? And the interesting thing is, they walk back to the boat. For the second time that night, Peter walks on water. He does the miracle again because Jesus is holding him up. And I think this is really God's grace in action. And the bit that strikes me most about this is even Peter sinking in the water was closer to Jesus than all of the competent disciples in the boat. Right? So think about that. Peter technically failed, but his failure in faith put him further ahead than all of the disciples' success in their self-reliance. That's a really interesting thought, isn't it? So the disciples who stayed in the boat, they were still stuck, still rowing, still going nowhere. But Peter, well, he was with Jesus and he got to experience something the others never did. And Peter, for the second time, got to walk on water. And so the Bible tells us that when they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. And I love this part of the story, right? They climbed back into the boat. I mean, picture that, right? But notice what Jesus doesn't do in this story. He doesn't stay walking on the water while they row behind him. He doesn't drag them to shore with a rope. He doesn't even teleport them to the other side, right? I mean, he totally could do. That would have been cool. But he didn't even teleport himself. He gets into the boat. The very boat that had become their prison, the very boat where their expertise and skills didn't sort of exhausted themselves and didn't help them. Jesus climbs into that, and when he does, the wind stops. So it's the same boat, the same oars, the same tired disciples, but now Jesus is in it with them, which creates this really interesting paradox that we really need to notice. Because after all this had gone on, right, they're still only halfway across the lake. So they've still got another 2 hours to go to the shore. They still had to row to the shore. And so I think sometimes God's grace, when he gets in the mess with you, doesn't mean you stop working. Peter had to pick up that oar again, but somehow it probably didn't feel like defeat anymore. And for me, maybe I'm sort of still only halfway across the lake with the stuff that we've been going through. I know I'm still tired. I'm still looking forward to a really good rest when we hit the shore. But I tell you what, it feels a lot easier now and definitely a lot more hopeful. And I get that sometimes we invite Jesus into the boat and the storms don't stop. You know, we've heard talks like this if you've been around church for a while. Sometimes you pray and still get divorced. Sometimes you have faith and the diagnosis doesn't improve. And I'm not going to stand here and promise you smooth sailing. I don't think that's what Jesus promised either. I think what he promises you is his presence. I'm with you always, even to the end of the world. I don't think Jesus ever said, I will make everything easy. In fact, quite the opposite when you read the Gospels. Like I said last week, if you want an easy life, I would not become a Christian. But if you want an adventure, well, I think that's a very different story. I don't think the oars suddenly become weightless for the disciples. It's that you're not carrying them alone all of a sudden. There's a difference between, I think, pointless exhaustion and what I call purposeful struggle. Okay, so instead of rowing in circles, you're rowing towards something. So, what does Jesus in the boat actually feel like? Because it's a great phrase. What does it mean? So, for me, it's knowing that I should keep going and not just that I can. Okay, so that I should keep going, not just that I can. In other words, I think Jesus in the boat is about two things. It's about mission and the power. Okay, it's that faith. You have faith that the struggle has purpose. Okay, let me put it to you that way. And I've noticed that when Jesus gets into the boat, another thing that happens is you feel like you can finally talk to the people rowing next to you. I think the shame lifts enough to say, you know what, I'm struggling. Because if Jesus isn't disappointed in my failure, and I think Jesus can handle our failures a lot more than he can handle our disobedience, let me tell you, maybe I don't have to pretend I'm not failing anymore, and I can talk to the people next to me about that. So do you feel like you are in the storm and not really getting anywhere? Do you feel like you are doing everything you know to do, but it's simply not working? And I think if that's you, just say it out loud. Lord, would you get into this boat with me? And I think when you say it and nothing seems to change, just remember that presence isn't always a feeling. Sometimes it's just a decision to not row alone, to do it in faith, that there is a purpose, that there is a calling, there is a mission here. And maybe the other thing that we can do is just be open to giving a ring to someone who is also struggling. And let's stop rowing in silence together, right? Now, last week we talked about being a character in God's story rather than the author of your own. And I think this is what that looks like on a Monday morning. It's about letting Jesus into your boat, into your work, into your exhaustion. And remember, grace doesn't make you stop rowing. You still have to do that. But I think what grace does is it adds his ability to yours. The same work, the same skill, the same you. But in addition, you have his presence and you have his grace. Sometimes the wind stops when he gets into the boat. And sometimes it doesn't. But he is still there. And that's God's grace. And that's enough. Certainly enough for me. So when you've done, Paul put it this way, didn't he? He said, when you've done all you can to stand, stand. And I think it's very poignant in this story. When you've done all to row, row. And you never know what's going to happen. So I would normally give like a little warning that I've come to the end of my talk, but in true So You Reap fashion, back over to you, Dan.
Cheers. Thanks. Oh, thanks for that, Matt.
Wow.
That was, yeah.
That was brilliant,
Yeah,
Matt.
that was great.
Really brilliant.
Yeah.
Good. I'm off now. See you later.
Okay, bye.
Do you know,
Oh,
yeah, I love
was.
that. But do you know what? I like listening to a talk with you, Jan.
Do you?
It's like watching a film with my sister. If I watch a film with my sister, if there's a crash or something's happening, it's like, oh, ah,
Yeah,
and I can
my
hear Jan go, oh yeah, wow, it's brilliant. I could get exciting commentary.
Yeah.
So Jan, what was your wow? Your ooh?
I mean, there was just so much actually in there that made me go. Oh. I just saw myself in the boat, and I could, I think Matt brilliantly set the scene. I think, I could smell the water. I could see the blood on Peter's hands. I was there. I was cold and I was wet and I was miserable in the boat. And you know what? I don't think I would ever have, when when we saw, they saw what they thought was a ghost, I would not have been the person to say, can I come out?
I'd have been
like watching and that makes me feel sad, because there are those people, and go-getters, pioneers, passionate.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we don't have passion, or that I don't, but although we laugh at Peter, don't we? We go, oh, Peter, what's he like? But actually, he was very brave, and he was very, as Matt said, he experienced something that the others never did.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad. How many times have I watched people do things amazingly well, and I've been in awe of that? Why didn't I do it?
I know. As you were saying that, I sort of had two thoughts. One was, because I wrote it down, that Peter, he'd rather sink with Jesus and have that opportunity than miss out. But then I always thought, well, but there still were those disciples in the boat. Jesus said, go off in the boat. They still did what they'd been asked to do. But sometimes, a lot of the time, I think, would I be that Peter? Would I jump out?
Yeah.
The thing that really struck me was Jesus took this opportunity with people that it was their expertise. I'd never really taken that on before. It wasn't just, they're fishermen. They knew all about this. They weren't, when they told it later, it wasn't like, it wasn't a carpentry thing where they didn't know as much as Jesus. This was their bread and butter. This is what they did. They'd done everything they could humanly possible. Yeah. So when they told it and repeated it to people, we're fishermen. Yeah. This wasn't
It's like Matt said, they knew the storms, they knew the sea, they knew the currents.
Yeah.
This was a bad storm, this was a bad night. And I don't think, whatever our jobs are, or whatever situation you've got going on in a home, it feels like it sometimes that it can, this really was a bad week. I thought last week was bad, but this is really bad. Yeah. And for us, it can be like an epic experience that we go through, and we think, how many times have we said, Lord, if you get me through this, I'll never ask for anything ever again. I think I've said that about 100 times, because we quickly forget, don't we, what we've been through. But the whole thing, as Matt was, telling the story, reminded me of, as a nurse, as a midwife, I was taught that the body is at its lowest ebb round about 3-4 o'clock in the morning. That's when most people die. And it's like your blood sugar's low. You are physically tired, you're mentally tired, you just need to go to bed, really. And someone who's done many night shifts, that was the hardest period, 3 till 4. You start getting cold, you start just dreaming about your bed. And it would often be the time when real emergencies happened. There's one night that stands out amongst, that was the epic night for me. I had about 2, but not many over 30 years. And there's 2 nights that stand out. That was the storm. And it was absolutely horrendous. It was like being in a World War II hospital, it was just casualties everywhere. But when I was just so challenged when Matt said, when Jesus got into the boat with Peter, the storm calmed right down, but they still had to row. Yeah. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding. What, after they'd been through all of that, they still had to, Jesus didn't miraculously get them to the other side. They still had to work. And I remember in the midst of that those 2 horrendous nights, I still had to work. My shift wasn't over for another 4 hours. And, and it's something to really ponder on. I need to really listen to that again. But the presence of God is with us in the midst of those horrendous times. But we can't just give up.
Mm.
We've got to keep going. Yeah, massively challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've said it lots of times actually before on Crowd. Jesus didn't change the situation. That even when he was walking, he stopped the storm after.
Yeah.
When they got back to the boat.
Yeah.
You know, Peter had that opportunity to join him in the storm, when it was still full on, and like you said, then they still had to row back. We're still. It's very rare that he plucks us and takes us out of the situation. We're there, but now we know. We've got that reassurance that he's with us, and it may be sometimes there is something miraculous that helps, that intervention. But there's still those hours left. And this was after such a high point, like you said, like feeding the 5,000. Wow, we're stuffed. We just think this amazing miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is crazy, isn't it? After a day like that. We've all had days where we've gone, today was amazing, God. It couldn't have gone any better. We saw you move. We saw you do some really funky stuff. It was an amazing day. By 3 o'clock in the morning, we've forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
Right. And we've moved on because life has a habit of causing us to forget and move on. And I think, and you can look at that and go, fair play. I can see why they'd forgotten about it, in the midst of the storm. But I think it's just really fascinating, isn't it? After the day that they had, I think as Christians, sometimes we look at things and I feel great with God. I'm sort of feeling like I finally get there. And then in that, it's not long after that, and I'm not prophesying it out or anything like that, but it's not long after that quite often we have some of our biggest challenges.
Yeah.
It's like baptism, isn't it? After a baptism, it's not like we're speaking failure of, trouble into anyone's life. But just as when Jesus was baptized, he was then sent out into the wilderness for 40 days, 40 nights, where the devil tempted him. And I think a lot of us can testify that when we've had a great high, even in God, there's often a low coming. And that isn't, a spreading doom. It's just the way life is generally.
But also, what I take from that is that God knew. So why do you think Jesus said, you go over to the other side, I'll tell these people? How else was he getting?
Do you think Jesus...
the other boat? He was like, send them off. I'm not going to walk all the way around. I've always got this plan that I'm walking straight across.
Yeah.
I wonder if he did. I wonder if he thought, I know there's a storm coming. There's no way I'm getting in that boat. I'll let them do it. It's I can't imagine. One of the things that I didn't get a chance to talk about, because of time, but one of the things that stands out to me in this story is Peter enters the miraculous by walking on water, right? And the other guys, they experienced the miracle of Jesus getting in the boat and calming the storm, and they worshipped him, and they say truly he was the Son of God, and all that sort of stuff. Everyone's having a jolly good old time at the end of it. But what's interesting to me is how many times in life do we say, when I get here, I will do this, right? So the classic one for me was, God, when I earn this much money, I will give this much money, right? So I'm like, this was a target in my head, like I'm bargaining with God somehow. And I think Peter... we know he's terrified. We know he's exhausted. We know it's been horrendous. But that's when he said, let's have a go, right? And it's like so many times we think we disqualify ourselves from getting involved in the miraculous because we feel like we're not ready, right? And I look at this story and go, Peter wasn't ready, but he had a go. Do you know what I mean? And I think you don't have to wait for all your ducks to be in a row to enter into some really interesting stuff with your walk with God, and to enter into the miraculous, and to trust Christ in the most extraordinary way, right where you are in life right now. Whatever your excuse is for not doing that, just think about Peter in that boat, and think about the disciples in that boat. They all had good excuses, but none of them were valid, because it's like Jesus is like, yeah, so what, right? Sure, come on out, dude. And I think don't disqualify yourself, would be, with what's going on in life, don't disqualify yourself. I've seen some of the best Bible teachers are people that don't have education, right? Is a reality of life. Sometimes the best witnesses for Christ have come from the most horrific backgrounds. They've got sometimes the most generous people are some of the poorest people. Sometimes the happiest people are the people without. The most generous people that invite you around for dinner aren't the guys that can afford to invite you around for dinner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you don't need to wait for everything to start. Like, whatever you feel like God's calling you to do, whatever you feel like the purpose is, whatever you feel like the mission is, that stepping out of the boat. Put it this way, right? If that water was calm and there was no storm, it would not have been any easier for Peter to walk on that water, right? If there'd have been no storm and it was 8 o'clock at night and the sun was starting to set and they were nearing the shore and Peter could see the fires and smell the bread his wife was making, it would not have been any easier to walk on the water. And I think we look at our circumstances and we look at what's going on around us quite a lot. So often, it's true in my life, it's so easy to disqualify yourself from the miraculous. And I would say, don't do that. I'd say, whatever you're in, whatever storms you're going through, God can still do some mighty stuff through you. You're not disqualified. Sorry, I just went off on one.
That's great. And I was liking what you were saying there too. For those of us that are parents, I don't think I ever got to a stage where I thought, okay, all sorted. I know how to be a parent now. We'll have kids.
Oh, I did. Yeah. It's a doddle, actually.
You have to step out, don't you? This is what I want to do. This is what I should be doing. I'm going to learn. I can prepare some. Yeah. I can learn. I can spend time with God. I can read some books. Yeah. But I'm not going to experience it until I'm actually doing it.
No.
Well, it's the same with anything worthwhile. Being a parent, being married, being a friend, doing work. I mean, just none of it. I couldn't plan for where I am in life now.
No.
If I was planning my life, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Do you know what I mean? But thank God I am where I am right now. Right. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
No.
And so, I think it's true. But there's just something about, I think, the things of God that it becomes easy to disqualify ourselves. And I'd hate for us to do that. Yeah. Because I think God can do some funky things. And funky is a word that should definitely be in the Bible.
I'm just sorry.
Just looking at the comments.
Is there any comments? Yeah.
Luna says, I'm with you. So many times I stand back and watch others in awe as I'm too scared to speak out.
Yeah.
I think that's probably responding what you were saying, Jan.
With you there. I can totally relate to that.
I love the YouTube name Funny Budgie Antics. I've no idea what Funny Budgie Antics are, but I guess they're funny. Says we should trust God to calm the waters in the situations that we're in. Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because again, if I think about the storm, we know the waves calm down, and we know that there's a couple of occasions in Scripture where Jesus calms the water. There's another occasion where Jesus is on the boat and he's fast asleep, and the disciples worry him up and say, "Do you not care that we're going to die?" Yeah. And he goes again, "Where's your faith?" And he rebukes the wind and rebukes the waves. And a similar sort of ending. They worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Right? Who commands the wind and the waves?
Yeah.
And so this is the second time we see Christ doing that. But then it's like last week, I think it was last week, and we talked about the storm with Paul,
Well,
right?
I'm just about to say, yeah, Paul 7 times
Yeah.
shipwrecked. You know, it didn't.
He was
work.
shipwrecked, right? The waves didn't die down.
Yeah.
And in fact, what he did was he stood up in front of the men and he said, "Take courage." Paul, I'm going to poke you in the eye. That's what I'm going to do, right? He says, "Take courage. The ship's going down, but all our lives will be spared."
Yeah.
And I think again, I would agree with you. It's good to trust God to calm the storm because we don't have the ability to do it. But we don't need for the storm to stop before we carry on,
No.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So had the waves not died down, I think they still would have been able to row to shore. It would have been harder, sure. But I think God gives you the grace and the strength to do that. And like with Paul,
one more in the boat.
yeah,
That's what I wrote down. You know, even if Jesus hadn't stopped the storm, he was there with them then.
Yeah.
One more person
yeah.
to row that boat back to shore.
Because I think it's easy to judge. What we do as Christians, I think, is we often judge the blessing of God in our lives by how calm the storms are. Right? So if life is good and things are relatively calm, I feel happy, I feel peaceful, joyful, the kids are well behaved, you know, dinner's good, life's good. We're going on holiday. We've #blessed, right? But I think, what about when you're in the storms or in the shipwrecks or the boat goes under, but and you're washed up ashore and then you get bitten by a snake like Paul did? Am I not blessed then? And it's so easy to judge what God's doing in our lives by our environment. And there is a reason to do that, and there's an element of doing that, but it's not the only thing. And I think I wouldn't necessarily be in a rush to use that to sort of evaluate the work of God in my life.
No,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like we just said, a few hours earlier, they just witnessed the amazing miracle and were full on blessing, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those in retrospect, sort of once you're through it and you're dry and you're sitting in front of a warm fire, they can say, I learnt a lot through that storm. But in the midst of it, you just have to keep going, don't you? And you don't realise that it's a growth moment.
Yeah.
You think it's a death moment. But you don't go, we're going to really grow in character from this storm. It's like, but in retrospect, we can see that those moments are the ones that really shape us the most.
Yeah. That's so true, isn't it?
Peter never forgot that moment.
No.
We can talk to him about that in heaven.
Yeah. I'm so looking forward to actually getting,
I'm walking on water in heaven.
Yeah.
If I keep trying in the swimming pool, and I'm going to keep trying because one day it might work. But if not, when I get to heaven, I'm definitely going to walk on water. Me and the Lord. I should have an arrangement. And I'm going to slide down the streets of gold in my socks. That's my plan.
I do. I do. I'm looking forward to just speaking to some of these people and just, I think we say that now, don't we? And then just the awe of looking at Jesus' face will just be too much. That'll take a few millennium.
Yeah.
Perhaps a few millennium later, we might have a chat with Peter and say, what was that walking on water like? Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
Get to have a go. Yeah. Absolutely. Shall we go to? Sorry, you're hosting. Let me. We should probably go
Matt,
to
can you
Live
just
Lounge.
Back off a bit.
Yeah, no.
Give us space.
No, not at all.
Zoe, could you put? You've probably already done it. Put the Google Meet details in the comments. So if you'd like to join us for Live Lounge afterwards, please do. We just get to hang out and chat. Actual.
Yeah. Come and join us.
Yeah. And just a reminder, so we're back again next week. I don't know what the talk is next week. I don't know if things have shifted or not.
No. So, sorry, guys, it's me again. 3 weeks on the bounce. We're talking about biblical friendship next week. So we're carrying on the wholeness series. I would have done that talk tonight, but I just wasn't ready. I'm not going to lie, though. With a few short hours, we didn't have time to finish that off. So we're going to do biblical friendship next week. And I'll be here for that. And also on Wednesday, can I just say, if you're watching this and you are new to the Christian faith, or you're still thinking about the Christian faith, and you've not done an Alpha course, we have an Alpha starting on Wednesday. There's about 28 people which have registered so far, which is great. Now, not all 28 people are going to show up. Well, I say that, don't let me, you're all welcome, obviously. My experience is not everybody shows up. But you would be more than welcome to come join in. And every week, basically, we watch a short video, like an 18-minute video, done by the guys at Alpha. The videos are really good. They focus around one key question, like, is there more to life than this? Who is Jesus? Why did Jesus die? Looking at some of these bigger questions around the Christian faith. And so if you're curious, if you want to know more, about the Christian faith, I highly recommend Alpha. And after the video, the 20-minute video, we just sit and chat. There's no judgment. There's no right or wrong answers. Everyone's got an opinion, and everyone can throw it in. Some people don't want to do that. Some people actually just want to join in through the chat on Zoom and don't want to use their microphone. That's totally fine. And whatever you're comfortable with, it'll be great to see you at Alpha. There is more information on the website, www.crowd.church/alpha. And if you want to get involved, just fill out the little form on there, and that'll come through to us, and we can start sending you the emails with the Zoom link and all that sort of stuff. So if you'd like to come join us in Alpha, it'd be great to see you there. That starts this Wednesday the 14th of January, at 7:30 p.m. UK time. So it'll be 7:30 in the evening here in the UK. If you're outside of the UK, there's a little time converter that you can use on the web, which will convert that to your local time. But it'd be great to see you in there. And like I say, just fill out the form if you want to know more about it. Sorry.
Absolutely.
No, that's brilliant.
No, brilliant.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you very much, Jan, for...
Yeah, really enjoyed tonight. It was great. Yeah.
And goodbye for me. And we'll see you again.
Have a great week, everyone.
Next week.
Have a really great week.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.